turn to item 24 on the agenda. This is a mandatory spay neuter ordinance for dogs and cats over 4 months. The introduction and the presentation on this will be made by Dr. Eric Walsh, Director of Public Health, City of Pasadena. This is a matter that has come from the Public Safety Committee, and so perhaps before Dr. Walsh addresses us, shall we give Vice Mayor Jackie Robinson the opportunity to offer a comment on this subject if she wishes to make one.
Mike, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. This item was held at the last meeting of the Public Safety Committee. It was heard also in connection with the recommendation regarding tethering that staff will speak on, but this recommendation that's coming forward today only speaks to the spay and neuter portion of the recommendation, which the committee unanimously adopted, and staff will do further research on the tethering issue because there were some questions about enforcement.
Dr. Walsh, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And I also want to thank the representatives from the Pasadena Humane Society who are here. We appreciate your time, as well as one of our other directors, Siobhan Foster, who will be, a lot of our work with the Humane Society will be transferring to, so I appreciate her time here tonight as well. So based on recommendations from the Pasadena Humane Society, the staff recommends that we mandate adult cats and dogs over 4 months of age be spayed or neutered, and then that we also establish exceptions to the mandate. So part of this is because we are looking at ways to reduce attacks, and Council Member Madison actually really helped to lead us in looking at these ways. For people, we know that children are most at risk, especially those 12 and under. Dogs in lower income neighborhoods were more likely to bite. And for dogs, intact males represented 70 to 76% of reported dog bite incidences. Females with pups are more likely to bite, and some evidence to show biting dogs are more likely to be chained while in the yard. So in addition to bite risk reduction, spaying and neutering does offer some other benefits that we think are beneficial to the city of Pasadena and our residents. And one of them is that the sterilization of cats and dogs is an effective means of population control. And overpopulation of strays can lead to certain zoonotic diseases, such as toxoplasmosis and even murine typhus. Some of the exceptions that we'd be looking to put in are that the dogs be 4 months of age and older, dogs which are unable to be spayed or neutered without a high likelihood of suffering, serious bodily harm or death due to age or infirmity would be exempt, and of course veterinarians can help to show that. Dogs used by law enforcement agencies for law enforcement purposes, service or assistance dogs that assist disabled persons, or competition dogs. This is very similar if you look at the legislation in other municipalities all around the country. They're very similar. So the registration fees we also included in this, and right now our adopted rate for fiscal year 2014 is $32.11 for unaltered and $16.07 for altered. As a way to really try and incentivize spaying and neutering, we said that one of the things that we would propose to change the mandate that it's $60 more for an unaltered dog, so that it's more expensive to have an unaltered dog, and hopefully drive more people to get the dog spayed or neutered. And we don't license cats, so we can't do this for the cats. So our recommendation is to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance and return within 60 days, mandating the spay and neuter of cats and dogs, excluding those that meet exclusion criteria, establish a fee differential such that a dog license for an unaltered animal is $60 more than spay-neutered animals, and find that mandatory spay-neuter of cats and dogs is exempt from CEQA pursuant to state guidelines, section 15061B3.
And Council, just to add on to what Dr. Walsh said, this was really the culmination of a number of discussions with the Public Safety Committee. Councilmember Madison in particular had highlighted the risks associated with dog attacks. There's been some very notable attacks in the press, one tragic attack out in the Antelope Valley last month. Current state law, the Health and Safety Code, prevents cities from adopting breed-specific legislation, so you can't ban a particular type of dog, whether it be a pit bull, a Rottweiler, or other dogs. And so really the spay-neuter is the humane response to this. As the doctor indicated, most of the analysis indicates that intact males are a higher risk. If they're spayed, neutered, they are a little more docile. They also tend not to wander and roam, and so few animals are getting picked up. We have an overabundance of animals at the Humane Society. The staff report indicates that literally thousands that are picked up every year, so this was expected to have a benefit in that area as well. And so after a fairly exhaustive discussion at the Public Safety Committee, we're here with this recommendation before you tonight. If it's to move forward, when we come back with the ordinance, we would bring back the recommended modification to the general fee schedule as well.
Mr. Madison, we all know that you've taken a tremendous interest in this subject. May we look to you for your comments?
Very briefly, Mayor, we did have a lot of testimony and discussion at the committee about this. I continue to think it's really unfortunate that this state legislation prevents municipalities like Pasadena from enacting breed-specific legislation. The data that we reviewed indicated that about half of the fatal dog bite cases, and there are a number of them every year in our country, about half of them are pit bull type breeds that are responsible. And by the most liberal estimate, those breeds constitute about 5% of the total dog population. And many people believe it's much lower. So from a policy perspective, there's just no reason to not regulate that risk, that disproportionate risk. And we've had in our own community, Steve mentioned the attack up in Antelope Valley, we've had in our own city bad pit bull attacks. But the state legislation is what it is. I think we've taken a modest run at seeing whether there'd be support for amending that. Doesn't sound like that support is there for whatever reason. So this is kind of the best that we can do. And I continue to, I run around the Rose Bowl. I'm out walking. I see neutered pit bulls. And I think it's just a matter of time in our community when we're going to have a really, really bad episode, and it would be good to avoid that if we could. Obviously, there's an enforcement piece here. I'd like to think most people will want to follow the law, and that when we can, we'll enforce it. And even if we recognize that we won't be able to have perfect enforcement, it's important that we do what we can.
Mr. Gorlo?
Mayor, I just had a couple of questions. There's some exemptions provided from this spay-neuter mandate, and one of them is reputable breeders. How do we define a reputable breeder? Are they registered with the city or with a particular breeding organization?
I might actually ask for help from the Humane Society on that one because they helped us with this. So.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Richerkamp. I'm Senior Vice President at Pasadena Humane Society. And a reputable breeder would be breeders that are following the laws as mandated by the City of Pasadena, so they would be licensed breeders. They would not be breeding an overabundance of animals. And another factor that we would take in mind is that they would be part of a responsible breed club. So they would be breeding out when they have dogs that do not meet conformation or they have genetic problems, that those animals would be spayed and neutered before placed.
Where do I find, so a breeder has to register with the City of Pasadena?
Well, if they are acting as a business, they would have to have a business license with the City of Pasadena.
I don't want to get caught in that trap, because a business license is very different than, something or applying a set of criteria that then qualifies you as a reputable breeder. If all someone needs to call themselves a reputable breeder is a business license, then I think we're in trouble. I think that's a bit ambiguous.
Yeah, I would say that that would be the first step to being shown as a responsible breeder, is that you actually are a business.
Councilman
and then-
Gordo, as we develop the ordinance and bring it forward, we'll have certain defined terms as we do in any ordinance, and that's a term that we'll have to define with the assistance of the city attorney's office to specify specifically what is a breeder. And I would agree with you that possession of a business license certificate won't be it. It'll have a clear definition that will work within the context of our ordinance.
I'd be very interested in how we define reputable breeder, and I'd ask that staff ensure that we have clear criteria, and certainly simply walking into City Hall and applying for a business license, that's a ministerial act. Anyone who applies for a business license, we have to give a business license to. If that exempts them from the ordinance, then that's not sufficient for me, and so I would ask for clear criteria defining a reputable breeder, and making clear that it's not just someone who decides to acquire a business license and all of a sudden, they're in a neighborhood breeding, you name it, whatever breed, whether it's a pit bull or poodles. I still think it's problematic.
And as we'll be supporting this through enforcement, we would encourage to have a much more specific definition so we could assist more effectively.
Is there an organization, either statewide or national organization, that licenses breeders?
No, there's not. The USDA looks over what are larger breeding facilities, but home breeders, there's not an overarching organization that monitors them.
And I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for our staff, but when someone says I'm a breeder, are they limited in the number of dogs that they're allowed to have at any one time at their premises, whether it's a commercial premises or a home? Do we distinguish between the two? And then I'd like to know what the limits.
There's currently a limit to the number of dogs someone can have. I think that's part of our zoning code. I can't recall at the top if it makes a differentiation between a breeder and not. I believe it's just a flat limit on the maximum number of dogs. The certain number escapes me right now, but I know that's in our code because I've had occasion to look at it.
My recollection is I think it's more than that.
No,
But
it's 4. You can have under 4 months, so a mother with her pups.
Okay.
The other is
And that would apply to anyone, breeder or not?
to anyone, and if you had more than that, you would have to apply to the city for a kennel permit.
Okay.
That's correct.
Mr. Masuda, are you waiting?
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, I had one.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So with regard to revenue split, our current arrangement calls for, I think, it's a 50-50 split on net revenue, correct?
Correct, it is after, I believe it's after we reach a level of $89,000, then it is a 50-50 split.
So we're applying the same 50-50 split to the additional revenue associated with enforcement of
Correct.
this? And are we setting a cost recovery standard or limit for you to apply? I mean, how do we define when we're at net? Net of what?
It would be net of our costs for the licensing program itself. That was the agreement. When it comes to this is actually part of the agreement we currently have. There would
Okay,
not
so-
be an increase in.
So the net
the
of is the agreement that we went through
In
6
October,
months
yes.
or?
Right,
8
for them
months
to
ago?
take over the licensing. Historically, we received about $70,000 a year in animal licensing. They had startup costs just shy of 90. They'll be able to keep all the new money until they get to the 89 to 90, and then above that, it's a split.
Okay, I don't think the report referenced that prior agreement. If
No,
it did, I missed it.
Right, and that is a function of that agreement. We do expect some increase in revenues as a part of this action, but again, this isn't being done as a revenue-generating effort. It's being done to.
That's fine, I didn't catch the part where the previous agreement sets the standard of the base
Yes.
that they receive, and then we split the net revenues. I understand now. Thank you.
Mr. Masuda?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about when did the Pasadena Humane Society take over the responsibility of the annual licensing?
July 1st.
Oh, just, it's been very recent
Yes.
because I've had some people very
Yes, and-
surprised that they didn't get it from the city.
Yes.
And then, thank you for asking that question about the split because that's what I was going to ask. And you talked about, in your report, euthanizing approximately 1,300, I believe, dogs and cats annually.
Correct.
What's the projected reduction of going forward?
Going forward, we believe, it's hard to give a projected, it will not be an immediate reduction.
Sure.
It will be something over the next 4 or 5 years. We'll see a reduction in the amount of intake that we have. When we see a reduction in the amount of intake that we have, it spurs two things. I mean, we'll see a reduction in the amount of puppies and kittens,
Okay.
which that will be a fairly quick response. And then we see, with that reduction, those animals that are more challenging for us to place, that need a little bit more work than we can offer because there's such an influx of animals, we'll be able to work with them in a way to get them appropriate for adoption, that we see not only fewer puppies and kittens, but the adult animals coming in, being able to spend a little bit more time and finances on their health and their behavior and making them more appropriate for adoption. I can't give numbers, but that's our projection over the next 5 years with a good spay-neuter ordinance.
Okay, and part of that spay and neutering, it says that you're going to ensure affordability. Do you know about what that cost would be, Doctor?
Well, we are, in late November, we'll be opening an affordable spay-neuter clinic that will be available to anybody within our service areas. And we're looking at an average of $150 for a dog spay. I believe it's around $120 for a neuter. And cats, of course, are a bit more affordable than that. We also offer, and this we get grants to help us with, we do spay or neuter pit bulls for free for any of the residents within our service cities, and chihuahuas as well.
Okay. How does that compare to veterinarians? They're I understand, have reduced fees, so.
The veterinarians, a spay of a smaller dog can start at $300. So
Okay.
we are less than half on average.
Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, I think you're waiting.
I'll be very quick about it. Dr. Walsh, there's been a considerable conversation at the Public Safety Committee level and here tonight in reference to specific breeds. And so it's clear that we cannot target breed-specific populations. So I'd like to understand, if you can quickly, what is the educational outreach, both from the Humane Society and from the city, that will take place in lieu of targeting breed-specific ordinances or aspects of the ordinance. And it seemed to, per Mr. Madison, seemed to really center around several breeds, Rottweilers, Pit Bulls, et cetera. But if we can't target, then we need to deal with it from an educational perspective. So can you briefly talk to us about what that education will entail, if any?
And I'll allow you to speak as well, but the way we kind of envision this is that as part of a canvassing campaign to increase the number of licensed dogs, that would be the way that we'd probably actually get into the community, meet with families, and begin to explain to them, how things could be made more safe, and actually, in many ways, actually protect their own animals and their pets that they love. So we hope that a lot of this actually happens through the very process itself. because if we are canvassing and going door to door, we actually get a chance to meet more of the families that have the dogs, and even something that we kind of are going to continue to look at, the tethering, give us even an opportunity to even explain some of the risks around even doing that based on just the California state law that applies there. So a lot of Humane Society to explain more, but really we are looking at hopefully allowing just the process that we've set up and kind of why we did the funding split is all around this idea of really getting into the community and increasing the number of dogs that are licensed. And in that process, we can do some education.
So I would also invite us to consider putting information in focus through the program that William Sims heads, I've forgotten the name of that.
Neighborhood Connections.
Connections, and also our public access television program, possibly a structured program really answering community questions and dealing with the issues, very valid issues that Councilmember Madison and others have raised. I think that would be a smart way to consider educating the community. And I'd offer that as something that maybe you should give a little bit more thought to.
Well, we would take any opportunity to be able to educate the communities about care of animals and public safety when it comes to animals. And the advantage of a spay-neuter ordinance like this, as opposed to breed-specific legislation, is this is a very long-term solution. If we're looking at breed-specific legislation, you know, it's pit bulls today, or pit bully breeds today. Will it be shepherds tomorrow? I mean, these animals tend to become trends. When I started the Humane Society 8 years ago, a Chihuahua was a rarity. Right now, you go through our kennels, and we had 34 Chihuahuas the other day, and we've shipped over 600 across the country. So animals tend to come in trends. So this is being a broad type of legislation, will be able to support this for a long time. We won't have to have this conversation over and over again. Other ways that we're using to educate the public is we're holding low-cost vaccine clinics, both at the shelter itself and out in the community. That gives us another opportunity to educate people. So between licensing, low-cost vaccine clinics, making these services available, and then opening an affordable spay and neuter clinic available in the city of Pasadena. All of these, we think, will assist us in educating people, becoming the resource for people, because once they see that we can help them, we know then we can really push behavior and training classes, responsible dog ownership, responsible cat ownership, so to educate people how to have good animal husbandry and to keep the community safe.
And I just would say that, Councilmember Kennedy, those are great ideas, and I think we'll follow up with the Humane Society on how we can get some of those things carried out, because those are very good ways to reach the public as well in a broad sense.
Vice Mayor Robinson?
Unless there are any more questions, I'm happy to offer, I'm going to go a little backwards, a second if Mr. Madison would like to offer the motion to move this item forward.
Either way, I'll second the Vice Mayor's motion, or I'm happy to move it as well.
Moved by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Madison.
Must be some hidden fiscal impact or something.
There is one public comment card that has not been recognized, and that is Tina Clark. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. If mandatory spay-neuter had been proposed a few years ago, I'd be standing here speaking in favor of it. Everyone knows the benefits of spaying and neutering, so making it mandatory seems to make sense. But after doing a lot of research, I've changed my mind, and these are my reasons. First of all, an estimated 80 to 90% of pet owners voluntarily spay and neuter their animals. Many of those who don't are people with lower incomes who can't very well afford it. Even the low-cost spay and neuter clinics, such as the one the Pasadena Humane Society is talking about, are prohibitive to some people. If it became mandatory, two unintended effects would be to impose a significant financial hardship on some of these people and to induce others to give up their pets altogether, thus increasing the congestion in the pounds. Second, it's a fact that by far the largest population of intact animals is feral cats, and mandatory spay-neuter would do nothing to touch that population. Only an effective trap-neuter return program could do that. I understand that Pasadena Humane Society does have a TNR program, and expanding and enhancing that program to include more outreach and education about TNR and more assistance to the public with trapping would do what mandatory spay-neuter couldn't even hope to do with regard to feral cats. For these reasons, many of the major animal welfare organizations oppose mandatory spay-neuter, including the ASPCA, Alley Cat Allies, the No Kill Advocacy Center, as well as the National Canine Research Council and the American Veterinary Medical Association, just to name a few. Finally, I'd like to address the statement in the report from the Public Safety Committee that spay-neuter has been shown to reduce aggression in dogs. This is far from being an established fact, since a number of studies have found that spay-neuter does not reduce aggression in dogs. I have a list of some of those studies here, which I'd be happy to share with you all. I have copies if you want them. I'm a strong believer in spay-neuter as an indispensable part of managing shelter populations. However, making it mandatory has never proven to contribute to that goal. Rather, it has often made the situation worse. What is really needed are spay-neuter clinics that are financially and logistically accessible to everyone, along with an enhanced program of trap-neuter return for feral cats. Therefore, I urge you to please reconsider this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I want to note on the record that a message has been received today, this mid-morning, from Sharon Sanford. That was a letter of support for the ordinance that is before us tonight, and a copy has been handed to each member of the council as part of the record of tonight's proceedings. We do have a motion pending. We've heard a perspective on the ordinance that would urge us to reconsider in some way. Are there further questions? Are there objections to the ordinance, to the motion? The motion includes instructions to the city attorney to prepare an ordinance for our consideration in the fullness of time.
Mayor, and that would include the direction that I and others provided with regard to definitions. Okay.
That concludes the business of tonight's agenda. Please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Steve McNall. I'm President, CEO of Pasadena Humane Society, SPCA. I've been at the shelter for 34 years, and I never thought we would see the day that we would be able to address the impact that spay, neutering, and pet sterilization has on the communities. We applaud the City Council for looking at this mandate. We hope it goes forward. You notice there's 1,300 animals that were euthanized last year at our shelter and from the city of Pasadena. And most of those are young kittens and puppies, sick and injured animals. Our goal is zero euthanasia of animals totally. They're placeable. And so, again, I applaud you, and I'm looking for forward to the day when every animal has a home and there'll be no more euthanasia in the city of Pasadena. And it's mandates like this that help us reach our goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your presence tonight and for your support of the ordinance.